Stop looking for signs. Listen to me as one listens to a verdict. Everything that happens to you is not by chance. It is a sentence pronounced by the state you have chosen to inhabit. I don't come to calm your anxiety. I come to unmask it. Because the rush for results, the compulsion to check out there, the addiction to seeking confirmation, all of this is the perfect disguise for a silent error that steals your harvest before the seed even breaks ground. This error doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it whispers the moment you react to appearances, when you negotiate with doubt, when you behave like someone still begging for what has already been decreed in the invisible. The visible world has no will of its own. It merely reproduces with precision the state you maintain when no one is watching. Look at your life as a mirror. Every delay, every closed door, every word that hurts you is the faithful projection of the internal climate you decided to tolerate. If you want speed, abandon the habit of digging up the seed to see if it's growing. Create within yourself an end so absolute that time becomes irrelevant. The Creator doesn't wait for signs, He emits signs. He doesn't bargain with reality, He orders it in silence. The faith that manifests isn't noisy, it's steadfast. It is the serenity of someone who has already decided and doesn't go back to check. Today I will show you, unadorned, the 5 ways this invisible error infiltrates your day and drains your creative power. And I will give you the exact, simple, and inexorable correction for each one. If you do what I say, you will abandon the role of a beggar of coincidences and take the place that has always been yours, that of cause. From now on, you will not live to react to the world. You will make the world react to your state. Because reality doesn't reward what you ask for, it obeys what you are. The first error is trying to change the world without changing your state. It is the most common and most disguised error because it seems like effort, it seems like faith, it seems like action, but it is merely resistance disguised as movement. The person prays, repeats affirmations, reads books and seeks new techniques, but deep down still feels the same. They want to change circumstances, but don't want to abandon the identity that created them. And so, they live in a loop, reacting, begging, trying, waiting. The world, like an obedient mirror, merely reflects the untransformed state they continue to maintain. The error stems from a deep illusion, the belief that the visible has power, that it's the job, the relationship, the body, the government, the market, the person, anything external that needs to align first for peace to follow. But the truth is the opposite. Nothing changes out there until it changes in here. The physical world is a frozen photograph of your state of consciousness. Trying to alter the reflection without touching the cause is like arguing with a mirror to change your face. It is futile, exhausting, and ultimately despair-inducing. Correcting this error is simple, but it requires courage. Courage to abandon the story you've told yourself about who you are. Courage to stop justifying yourself, to cease lamenting, to look at your current circumstances and say, "This is merely a reflection of who I once was, not who I am now." Changing your state is not a struggle, it is a decision. It is ending the old identity like closing a book and choosing a new plot. The new state doesn't arise from effort, but from recognition. When you see yourself as someone already healed, already loved, already prosperous, even before anything proves it, you shift the axis of creation. The secret is the feeling. Close your eyes and feel the end as real. Don't imagine as one who wishes, imagine as one who remembers. Recall what has already happened, even if it hasn't yet happened in time, because in the invisible realm it already is. And when this becomes more real within you than the world outside, the universe has no choice. It must bow. So, if you want to transform your life, don't start with appearances but with consciousness. Don't try to change the storm. Change your internal climate. Cease effort and return to the principle. Everything is state. Inhabit the desired state as your new dwelling and remain in it until the world, obedient as it has always been, begins to change. And you will see. It wasn't the world that transformed. It was you who finally remembered who the Creator is. The second error is to imagine and then doubt. It is the error that kills more dreams than any other, because it arises immediately after the moment of creation. The person closes their eyes, imagines the end realized, feels for a few moments the joy of fulfillment, but soon the old habit returns. Their gaze turns back to the world, looking for signs, checking if anything has changed. And in doing so, the individual unconsciously declares that they do not believe. They plant the seed and then dig up the soil to see if it has germinated. And each time they do that, they interrupt the creative process. Doubt is the mind's most silent poison. It doesn't scream, it whispers. What if it doesn't work? What if I'm deluding myself? What if it's just imagination? These questions seem harmless, but each one is a command that dissolves the invisible form of what was about to be born. Imagination is the womb of creation, and when you doubt, you abort the invisible before it becomes visible. Correcting this requires silence. The true creator doesn't ask when or how. They know, they imagine and then rest, because they understand that the creative act was completed the instant they felt it as real. The rest is merely revelation in time. Faith isn't impatience, it's repose. When you imagine with conviction and then surrender, the invisible begins to work in ways your rational mind cannot conceive. But those who doubt want to control. They want to see immediate results, they want proof, they want to accelerate. And by trying to force the visible, they move away from the invisible power. Therefore, learn to trust in stillness. When your mind starts to tempt you with thoughts of, "It hasn't happened yet," respond calmly. It has already happened. It just hasn't been seen yet. That is the language of faith. Here is the secret. The universe is not moved by requests, but by certainties. When you doubt, you delay the natural cycle of manifestation. When you trust, time bends. So imagine, and then don't dwell on it. Walk as one who already possesses. Silent trust is more powerful than 1,000 anxious prayers. And when doubt comes, because it will come, simply observe it, smile, and return to the feeling of the accomplished end. The world will adjust to your firmness, because what you created in imagination already exists, and what exists in the invisible is as real as the ground beneath your feet. Doubt merely postpones, faith merely reveals. The third error is to confuse persistence with effort. Many believe that persisting means repeating the same affirmation 1,000 times, forcing the mind to think positively, or trying to control every thought. But that is not persistence. It is fear disguised as spiritual practice. The true creator doesn't force, they rest. Effort stems from disbelief. It is the desperate attempt to convince oneself of something that has not yet been accepted as truth. When the mind insists, it reveals that it doesn't trust. When consciousness knows, it is silent. The person who lives trying to maintain focus becomes a prisoner of their own vigilance. They exhaust themselves trying not to think incorrectly, trying to constantly feel what they desire, as if the universe were an examiner punishing them for every distraction. But the universe doesn't respond to the quantity of thoughts. It responds to the predominant tone of your internal state. A spark of conviction is more powerful than hours of mechanical repetition. To persist is not to fight against the old state. It is to remain in the new one. It is to return as many times as necessary to the feeling of already being, but without tension. When you realize you've drifted away, don't blame yourself, just return. Do it with lightness, like someone returning home, because that's what you are doing, returning to your true dwelling, the desired state. The correction for this error is simple, but it requires understanding. The power lies in rest. When you achieve the feeling of already having, there is nothing more to do. True persistence is to remain in that rest, even if the world shouts otherwise. It is the calm gaze of one who knows that the invisible is organizing itself in silence. If you want to accelerate your manifestation, abandon haste and effort. Both stem from a belief in lack. Calm, conversely, comes from one who already possesses. The one who knows doesn't need to repeat, they simply remember. The one who trusts doesn't rush, they merely observe. The one who already is doesn't try, they simply live. So when your mind starts pushing you towards effort, when you want to do more, repeat more, control more, stop and breathe. Remember, The creator doesn't need to convince himself that he created. He merely contemplates his creation and says, "It is done." And when you reach that level of tranquility, you will realize something profound. Effort ceases, the instant faith becomes natural. Persistence then stops being work and becomes a state, the state of one who already is. The fourth error is reacting to appearances. It's the moment when a person says they trust, but at the first contrary sign, everything collapses within them. They imagined, believed, felt, but a single bad news, a rejection, a delay was enough for doubt to reclaim the throne. Reaction is the reflection of what has not yet been mastered within you. It is the old state trying to regain ground, showing that your faith still depends on what your eyes see. And as long as it is like this, power will remain divided, sometimes in the visible, sometimes in the invisible. The world is an obedient screen, not an enemy. It shows, with precision, where you still dwell. When you react, you tell the universe, "I still believe in this." When you remain silent, you affirm, "This no longer defines me." Every emotion is a declaration. Anger is a request to remain trapped. Calm is a decree of mastery. The external world has no power to hurt you. It merely returns the vibration you are emitting. Correcting this error requires observation, not repression. Don't try to feign serenity. Honestly observe your reactions and ask, what state within me is creating this? The simple act of perceiving is already the beginning of transmutation. Because where there is consciousness, there is power. When you begin to see the relationship between your emotion and the events around you, you stop being a victim and become an alchemist. Each time you are tempted to react, remember, this too is your creation. If you created the scenario, you can change it. The highest form of mastery is not forced control, but conscious stillness. The person who masters their reactions is not cold, they are awake. They understand that nothing out there is personal, everything is symbolic. One who understands the symbol no longer fights with the image, they change the cause. And when appearances try to provoke you, when the world seems to contradict what you have already affirmed, simply say in silence, "I know what I have planted." These words are the Creator's shield. They mean, I am not moved by signs, I am moved by certainty. And the more you remain at this point of balance, the more quickly the world begins to reflect your new vibration. Mastering reaction is the boundary between the apprentice and the master, because true power is not in controlling the world, but in not allowing the world to control you. When you reach this state, nothing can move you from your center. And it is in this center, steadfast and silent, that the invisible bows and the impossible begins to move. The fifth error is to act as if it weren't yet. It is the most subtle error, and therefore the most dangerous. The person says they believe, repeats words of power, talks about the law, but lives, acts, and reacts as one who is still waiting for something to happen. It is the state of one who prays for rain while holding a closed umbrella. Their actions, choices, tone of voice, and even way of thinking still betray an identity, that of one who seeks, not one who has already found. And the universe, obedient, merely reflects this vibration of waiting. Many confuse faith with hope, but hope is a noble disguise for doubt. One who waits admits, deep down, that they don't have it yet. True faith doesn't wait, it assumes. That's why manifestation doesn't depend on time, but on identity. You don't receive what you desire, you receive what you are. As long as you are someone who tries to manifest, you will continue to attract situations that keep you trying. The cycle only ends when you stop trying and start being. Correcting this error is to abandon the mask of the seeker and put on the skin of the realized. It is to act, speak, and decide as someone who already possesses, even if the senses deny it. It is the as-if that makes the invisible inevitable. When your mind and body begin to align with your new identity, the world reorganizes to follow you. Reality is not the cause, it is the consequence. It follows the rhythm of your internal state. But it is necessary to understand, acting as if is not pretending. Pretending is theatrical. Assuming is creative. Pretending depends on the audience. Assuming depends only on conviction. Pretending tries to convince others. Assumption transforms the being. And when the being changes, the world changes with it. The Creator doesn't merely represent, he embodies. Therefore, live as one who already is. Speak with the serenity of one who already has. Give thanks without expectation, because what is yours has already been delivered in the invisible. Don't ask anymore. Don't beg anymore. Don't wait anymore. Walk in the silent certainty that the invisible precedes you. People will call it luck, coincidence, destiny. But you will know. It was the reflection of your new state. Rapid manifestation doesn't come from haste, but from complete acceptance. When you stop acting like one who seeks and start living as one who already is, time bends. Opportunities arise, doors open, faces change, and the world finally recognizes what you have silently assumed, because the entire universe is waiting for a command, the command of your identity. And when it says, "I already am," the universe responds, "So be it." Now understand, the error was never in destiny, nor in time, nor in people. It was always within you. It was hidden in the way you looked at the world, believing it had power over you, when in truth it was always the opposite. You spent years trying to fix effects, without realizing that the cause lay in the state you chose to maintain. Every struggle, every discouragement, every apparent defeat was merely the faithful reflection of a mind divided between believing and doubting. And it is this division that makes the miracle seem distant, when it has always been within reach of your consciousness. The invisible error is distraction. It is the escape from the present, the attempt to change life with words, but without changing your being. It is the habit of asking God, but acting as one who has not yet been heard. It is imagining and doubting, reacting and trying to control. All of this is the human mind fighting against what is already done. The true Creator does not fight. They observe, recognize, decide, and rest. Power is not in force, but in the silent acceptance of truth. The invisible is the only reality, and the visible is merely the delayed photograph of what has already been decided within. As long as you doubt, you delay the inevitable. As long as you react, you confirm the old state. As long as you wait, you declare absence. But when you assume, truly assume, everything changes. Everything. The timeline bends, people move, and the universe rearranges the pieces as if a new law has been pronounced. And it has. Because the word of the conscious person is law. They don't need to repeat 1,000 times what they have already decided. Once, spoken with conviction, is enough to move the invisible. The world around you is not an obstacle. It is a mirror. It perfectly reflects what you have chosen to be. If you want to see another image, don't touch the reflection. Change your face. This is the divine art of creation. Transforming yourself internally until the world has no other option but to follow your new vibration. When you understand this, you will realize that there is no haste or delay, only coherence. The universe is too precise to fail. It can only give you what matches what you are now, so don't ask for signs anymore. Be the sign. Don't clamor for the future. Live as one who has already fulfilled it. Time is not your judge, it is your servant. It merely reveals step by step what your consciousness has already decreed as real. When you change your state, the clock changes with you. Manifestation will stop being something that will happen and will become something that already is, and you are merely watching its revelation. Assume your place. Stop begging for light and recognize that you are the lamp itself. Reality doesn't resist one who decides, and when this decision is born from the center of your being, the entire world conspires to confirm it. There is no fight to wage, no promise to wait for. There is only one choice: to continue being what the reflection shows, or to assume what consciousness declares. Power is not in words, it is in the state behind them. And the most powerful state is the one that says effortlessly, "I already am." Sustain that vibration until it becomes natural. And when it becomes natural, the universe will call you by your new name. Not the name you were given, but the name you chose upon awakening: Creator. Because everything that exists, now and always, has been shaped by what you dared to assume as truth. Stop. Just stop for a moment. Close your eyes and feel the invisible weight of the things you've been carrying. Desires, worries, expectations, prayers that seem unanswered. The world taught you to chase what you want, to battle, to ask, to beg, to feel small in the face of life. But that is the greatest illusion of all, because the universe was never outside of you. It is the mirror of your consciousness, and everything you see, every detail of your reality, is merely a reflection of what you have silently assumed to be true within yourself. People spend their lives trying to change the effects, but they ignore the cause. They want the mirror to smile, but they keep their own faces closed off. They want new harvests, but insist on planting the same seeds of doubt, fear, and scarcity. Life does not respond to your requests. It responds to your state. That is why many pray with words of faith, but with feelings of absence. They ask for love, but vibrate loneliness. They ask for prosperity, but feel scarcity. And the universe, a faithful servant, merely reflects what the heart sustains as real. When I say repeat this just 6 times, I'm not talking about a magic ritual. I'm talking about a conscious act of creation, because repetition is not about the words, it is about the consciousness that inhabits them. Each time you repeat a truth with faith, the invisible begins to reorganize around it. You are not just saying something, you are shaping the substance of the invisible. The universe is malleable to your faith, but rigid in the face of your doubt. The mistake of most is to seek signs before feeling the truth. They want to see to believe, but they forget that to believe is to see. Everything begins with a simple inner gesture, assuming that what you desire already is, and sustaining that certainty, even when the visible world screams otherwise. That is faith, not the faith that waits, but the faith that knows. When you repeat an affirmation with this consciousness, it transforms into a command. The universe does not respond to pleas, it responds to decrees. That is why I say, repeat 6 times, not because the number holds mystical power, but because it is enough to break the mind's resistance and open space for feeling. 6 times of pure conviction are worth more than 1,000 empty repetitions. So, before you begin, quiet the noise of the world. Forget time, bills, news, people. Breathe and remember, you are the creative center of your reality. What you are about to do is not ask, it is to command. You are not trying to convince the universe, you are reminding it who you are. Because when the child remembers their inheritance, the father responds immediately. From this moment on, speak not as one who waits, but as one who already has. Not as one who seeks, but as one who has found. And notice, the energy changes, the air changes, the vibration of your body changes. It is in this state that the impossible begins to move toward you. Silent, precise, inevitable. Now prepare yourself. Because if you understand what lies behind these 6 repetitions, nothing will be impossible. The first principle is to understand that conscious repetition is the language of the invisible. Everything that exists began as an idea repeated with feeling. Every word spoken with faith shapes the substance of the unseen world, and what is sustained internally becomes inevitable on the physical plane. But there is a profound difference between repeating out of desperation and repeating out of consciousness. The desperate speak because they want to change what they see. The conscious speak because they have already changed what they feel. This is the key. True repetition is not a request. It is a silent declaration of mastery. Each time you affirm something with conviction, the universe understands this is, and the invisible begins to reorganize to reflect the state you have chosen to inhabit. What few realize is that the power of repetition is not in the number of times, but in the quality of presence. Saying I am prosperous 1,000 times without feeling anything is just noise, but saying it 6 times with a heart ablaze with certainty, feeling the weight of abundance in your hands, the warmth of gratitude in your chest is enough to move mountains. Creation does not obey numbers, it obeys vibrations. When the sound of your voice is in harmony with the feeling of your soul, the universe listens. It does not hear your words, it hears what they carry. Each repetition is a seed sown in the invisible field. The soil is your consciousness, and this soil does not reject what it receives, it merely multiplies. If you plant doubt, you reap confusion. If you plant certainty, you reap manifestations. Therefore, what you repeat in silence is even more powerful than what you say aloud. Because internal words shape the structure of your being, and what the being assumes the world reflects. Most live as spiritual beggars, repeating phrases without presence, believing that sound can replace feeling. It cannot. The vibration of the word is the vehicle, the fuel is the feeling. It is the feeling that gives life to the affirmation. When you say, "I am free," and truly feel freedom expanding within you, the invisible registers this as a law, and all the circumstances of your life begin to conspire to prove that the decree was true. This is the perfect justice of the law. It does not judge, it merely reflects. Therefore, it is not necessary to repeat 1,000 times. It is necessary to repeat until you believe. Repetition does not change the world, it changes you, and when you change, the world bends. The process is simple: declare, feel, sustain. Do this 6 times, not with the anxiety of seeing results, but with the serenity of one who knows the decree has already been fulfilled. True faith does not shout, does not beg, does not demand, it rests. It watches the invisible move and merely says, "It is done." So when you repeat, do not do it out of habit. Do it with intention. Close your eyes, withdraw from the world's noise, and go within yourself. Repeat with strength, with calm, and with love. See the image of your desire as already realized. Feel the relief of one who has already received. And know, the universe does not resist a heart that already believes. Because in the language of creation, the verb is not future, it is present. Everything you repeat with faith is already happening now. The second principle is to understand that everything you see on the outside is merely a reflection of what you are sustaining on the inside. The world is not a force attacking you, nor a reality separate from you. It is a faithful mirror of your consciousness. Every situation, every person, every event that arises before you is a response to what you believe to be true. There is no coincidence, there is correspondence. And as long as you try to change the mirror without changing your expression, you will continue repeating the same cycles, only with different faces and scenarios. External reality is like a shadow. It moves as the inner body moves. If you feel rejected, you will find rejection in every gesture, even if no one intends to push you away. If you feel blessed, life opens up in unexpected ways, even when everything seems to collapse. The world does not decide for you. It merely translates what you feel yourself to be. This is the law, and it is as exact as gravity. Therefore, as long as you look outward for proof, you will remain trapped in the cycle of doubt. Faith begins when you understand that there is nothing out there to conquer, only inner states to assume. The problem is not a lack of opportunities, but a lack of identity. When someone sees themselves as a failure trying to win, even if they fight with all their might, they will continue to attract situations that confirm their own belief. But when they decide to see themselves as victorious, even without results, the universe begins to conspire silently to prove they were right all along. Changing the reflection requires changing the gaze. What you feel about yourself is the mold that shapes the world. And it's not about ignoring reality, but about understanding that it is an echo. You don't need to fight the echo, just change the sound that provokes it. When consciousness changes, the world has no choice but to follow. That is why miracles happen suddenly. Not because something new was created, but because a new state was assumed. People often say, "When I have more money, I will be peaceful." But the law is inverse. When I am peaceful, money will come. Because the state of peacefulness is the vibration of abundance, and the universe only delivers what it finds in resonance. Everything is reflection. Everything is response. Everything is confirmation. So, look around. Everything you see is a testament to what you have believed about yourself. If you want to change the testament, change the belief. Begin to live as one who already is what they desire to be. Speak, walk, think and react as if everything has already been fulfilled. This is true prayer, not words spoken to heaven, but states assumed in the soul. The repetition that transforms is that which alters the inner reflection. When you repeat, "I am worthy, I am loved, I am prosperous," and sustain that feeling even if the world denies it, You are reprogramming the mirror of reality. And sooner or later, it will yield. Because the world is merely the inverted image of what you decide to believe. The third principle is to live now the state you wish to experience. The human mind is the portal between the invisible and the visible, and it only manifests what it recognizes as real. As long as you think of your desire as something distant, it will remain distant. Everything that seems not yet exists because you continue to sustain the not yet within yourself. The secret is to feel now as one who already possesses what they seek. It is not pretense, it is not illusion, it is spiritual understanding. When you assume the desired state as present, even without seeing it, the universe begins to reorganize to confirm what you have decided to be. Most live as if life is always about to happen. They say, "When I have this, I will be happy." But this phrase is a spell that traps them in time. Because the when never arrives, it renews itself each day in new forms of waiting. Life is not a sequence of events, it is a mirror of your being. Everything that is felt with truth now, even if only in imagination, is already creation. Imagination is the womb of reality. It is there that the invisible takes shape before being born into the world of the senses. Therefore, stop waiting for signs. Stop looking at the clock and doubting because the result has not yet come. Manifestation is not the future catching up to you. It is the present becoming conscious of itself. When you feel prosperous, loved, healed, complete, no matter what the world says, you are already vibrating in the corresponding reality. And the universe, being perfect in its laws, has no choice but to respond to the frequency you emit. Living the desired state is an act of silent faith. It is choosing to smile before the blessing, to give thanks before the miracle, to walk as one who has already arrived. It is the same principle that made Christ say, "Father, I thank you because you have already heard me." He did not wait for the sign. He lived the certainty. This is the posture of the true Creator. They do not seek, they express. They do not beg, they recognize. And you can do the same. If you desire prosperity, inwardly clothe yourself as prosperous. Feel the comfort of being in abundance. Imagine the freedom of owing nothing. Feel the relief of one who can choose without fear. If you desire love, feel the warmth of being loved, the respect of being seen, the peace of being complete. Do not wait for someone to give it to you. Bring that vibration within, and the world will reflect it in faces, places, and opportunities. Everything you want already exists in potential. What is missing is not the miracle, it is your decision to live it now. At every moment, you are choosing a state, that of lack or that of fullness. And it is this state, not your desire, that creates your experience. So live as one who already has, feel as one who already is, and the invisible will bend before your conviction. Because time does not create reality, consciousness creates time. The fourth principle is to abandon the habit of begging. As long as you ask, you declare that you do not have. As long as you plead, you affirm absence. The universe does not respond to pleas, it responds to silent commands born of certainty. What creates is not the act of asking, it is the act of assuming. When you speak as someone who already possesses, the universe understands the command and obeys. But when you speak as someone in need, you merely reinforce the distance between yourself and what you desire. That is why many pray and nothing changes, because their words say one thing, but their heart vibrates another. You were not born to beg for blessings. You were born to decree realities. Consciousness is the supreme authority over the invisible. When Christ said, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours," he was not teaching to ask. He was teaching to believe that you have already received. This is the difference between the common person and the conscious Creator. The common person asks for relief. The Creator gives thanks, because they have already been heard. One speaks from lack, the other speaks from fullness. And the universe, being a mirror, returns exactly the state from which the voice came. Begging is living in the illusion of separation, as if life is out there and you are here trying to reach it. But the universe is not separate from you. It is an extension of your consciousness. Everything you call outside is merely the visible part of your interior. Therefore, When you change within, the outside bends. The secret is to learn to speak to life as one who has authority over it, not as one who fears losing it. Asking is the act of the servant. Commanding is the act of the child. The servant waits for the master to listen. The child knows they are already an heir. When you understand this, you begin to pray differently. You no longer say, "Lord, help me," but, "Lord, I thank you because it is already mine." You do not cry out for something distant, but confirm something present. This change in posture is the point where energy transforms, because the universe does not obey your anxiety, it obeys your certainty. Those who live asking never realize that the request itself is the obstacle. It is like someone who, having received the key, continues to knock on the door. The act of knocking reinforces the belief that they are still outside, and meanwhile the portal remains open, waiting for them to simply enter. So it is with everything you seek. There is nothing locked. There is only your refusal to accept that it is already available. So stop pleading. Speak as one who already possesses. Give thanks before you see. Gratitude is the language of those who know. Say, "I have already received. It is done." And maintain this posture even when the world seems to contradict you. What the world shows is merely the echo of what you were yesterday. Remain firm in the state of "it is already," and the echo will transform. This is true prayer, not an anxious request, but a silent declaration of mastery, because the universe is not a judge, it is a faithful servant. It does not ask if you deserve. It merely obeys what you assume yourself to be. The fifth principle is to understand that persistence in feeling is what transforms the invisible into reality. Nothing resists an inner state sustained with faith. Most people begin believing, but give up halfway because they do not see immediate results. They forget that time, on the plane of manifestation, is merely the interval between feeling and seeing. The physical world is slow compared to the speed of consciousness. Therefore, when someone changes their state and maintains that vibration, the world inevitably bends. There are no exceptions. What they call waiting time is merely the universe adjusting to the new frequency. Creation does not happen when you imagine something once, but when that image becomes a home within you. It is easy to believe for a few minutes. It is difficult to remain in that state when the world contradicts what you have decided to be. And that is where few persevere. But it is precisely this constancy that defines the true creator. Repeating with feeling until the new state becomes natural, that is the secret. You do not need to force the result. You only need to keep the conviction alive. When the new state ceases to be an effort and becomes part of your identity, the invisible has already surrendered. The universe does not rush, but it also does not fail. It responds to the most dominant vibration you sustain. If today you affirm something and tomorrow you doubt, doubt becomes the stronger seed and the field responds to it. Persistence is the antidote to oscillation. It is to remain unshakable even in the face of contradiction. It is to feel rich even with an empty pocket, loved even in the absence of gestures, healed even in the face of pain. This is not illusion. It is faith in its purest state. And faith, when it becomes natural, transforms into law. Realize, the world does not change when you want it to. It changes when you already are. Therefore, do not struggle to believe. Inhabit the feeling. Make it your resting place. In the morning, before opening your eyes, immerse yourself in the sensation that everything is already fulfilled. At night, before sleeping, mentally relive the scene of your desire fulfilled and fall asleep in it. This is the sacred repetition, the one not measured in words but in vibration. You do not need to convince yourself. You merely need to allow yourself to remain. The universe does not ignore a heart that perseveres. It may seem silent, but it is working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, people, and opportunities to materialize what you have already decreed. Everything that is maintained with love and certainty becomes inevitable. So, persist. Even when the world seems still, continue feeling. Even when the result takes time, continue believing. Because persistence is not insistence, it is trust. And when your feeling becomes unshakable, the universe has no alternative but to obey. The invisible is moved by the constancy of feeling, and constancy is the purest proof of faith. Sustain the state until it sustains you, and then everything you desire will come naturally, as something that was always yours. Everything you have heard so far converges to a simple and immutable truth. The power is within you. There are no external forces deciding your destiny, no luck, no chance. There is only consciousness. Everything that manifests in your life is the perfect reflection of the state you have chosen to inhabit. The universe is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It denies you nothing. It merely returns what you sustain with greater conviction. Therefore, it is useless to ask for changes if you continue vibrating in the same identity. The world can only offer you what you believe yourself to be. From this moment on, stop acting as someone who needs to convince the universe to hear you. You are already heard. You always have been. Every thought of yours is a command. Every feeling, a silent order. And each time you repeat a truth with faith, the invisible begins to move to materialize it. There is no magic, there is law. The law of assumption is the foundation of all creation. What you assume to be true within yourself sooner or later will become visible. So, beg no more. Command. Speak with serenity, with authority, with the power of one who knows they are an heir to creation itself. Nothing is impossible for one who lives in the state of, "It is already." And when fear comes, when doubt whispers, return to inner silence and repeat, "Everything I desire is already coming to me." 6 times are enough, provided each word is charged with certainty. Feel the energy shift within you. The air becomes lighter, the heart firmer, the spirit more awake. This is how reality bends. This is how the invisible bows before faith. You do not need to chase what is yours. You merely need to remember who you are. The Creator does not ask, they decree. And the universe, obedient, responds, "It is done." I remember well the night Neville came to me, carrying in his eyes the unease of someone who no longer knows who to turn to. He had tried prayers, sought advice, hoped the world would move in his favor, but everything seemed to remain still. He felt imprisoned by circumstances, like so many men who believe life is written from the outside in, as if they were leaves carried by the wind. I looked at him and immediately perceived his confusion. He thought external conditions were masters of his life, when in truth they were only reflections of what he silently held within himself. Neville asked me, "What must I do to make things change? Where can I find the key?" I didn't give him vague promises or moral advice. I went straight to the point, as I always do. "Listen to me, Neville. What you see outside is not the cause, but the effect. Not the root, but the shadow. The external world is merely a mirror of what you have chosen to accept as true within yourself. Nothing more." He frowned, as if he didn't understand, and I continued. "You think you are hostage to the facts, but it is the facts that are hostage to the state you inhabit. As long as you keep looking to the world to change, you will remain its slave. But the moment you dare to assume within yourself the scene already concluded, life will bend to that decree. When you visualize in this way, Neville, you don't wait for it to happen. You order that it already is. And the world, which is nothing more than an echo, obeys you." It was at that moment that he began to perceive, not completely, because the intellect resists, but a spark ignited in him. I showed him that imagination is not daydreaming, not an escape. It is creative power. When used correctly, it governs all reality. And this, I told him, and I tell you now, is the secret that transforms existence. Everything you call reality is simply life as obedience to the internal state you choose to inhabit. When Neville, still incredulous, heard me say that the first step was to assume the end, he almost laughed. To his logical mind, that seemed absurd. How could someone live the result before any sign? How could someone declare as true something that his eyes did not see? He said to me, "But isn't that self-deception? Aren't I just lying to myself?" I stared at him in silence for a moment, letting the unease consume him, and then I answered firmly, "The lie, Neville, is believing that what you see outside is more real than what you can sustain within yourself. The only falsehood is giving power to appearances. The truth is what you choose to assume as already being yours. Life doesn't wait for proof. Life obeys the decree of a convinced heart. I explained to him that assuming the end was not desiring. Desire always points to the distance, to the lack, to the not yet. Desire cries out, one day it will be. But assuming the end is completely different. It's retreating in silence, closing your eyes and dressing the scene as if it were a memory. It's feeling the embrace already received. It's walking through the house already acquired. It's hearing the voice that confirms what was so sought after. When the end is truly assumed, the soul no longer begs or questions. It simply rests in the accomplished fact. I told him, don't think about what is yet to come. Think about what already is. Don't ask for it to happen. Celebrate as someone who has already lived it. Neville, still resistant, replied, but how can I believe in something I don't see? And I answered him with the same clarity as always. It is not a matter of believing with your eyes, but of believing with your being. The tree doesn't need to wait for spring to know that it will bear fruit. It already carries the season in its seed. In the same way, you don't need to wait for the world to give you signs to know that the end is already yours. You are the seed, and within you the harvest is already guaranteed. I then led him to an exercise. I told him to close his eyes and imagine himself already where he desired to be. I asked him not to be a mere spectator, but a participant in the scene, to feel the textures, to hear the sounds, to breathe the air of that environment. Don't stay outside the vision, Neville. Enter it as someone who already lives there. Make the scene so real that when you open your eyes, you feel like you've returned from a trip, not that you dreamed. He practiced with effort, and soon the doubt came. What if I lose focus? What if I can't sustain it? I told him, don't worry about stumbling. Each return to the scene is like hammering the same stake until the ground yields. It's not an isolated act that creates, but the repeated conviction until it becomes natural. Sustain the memory until the heart no longer asks, but affirms, this is mine. Over time, Neville began to understand. The change didn't come from the outside in, but from the inside out. He noticed that, upon assuming the end, his posture changed, his words changed, his atmosphere changed. And when he already moved as someone who possessed that thing in secret, the circumstances of the external world rearranged themselves like obedient pieces. Then I said to him, do you see now? The end is not a distant promise. The end is the only true beginning. If you dare to live it within yourself, the world will have no choice but to bow before your conviction. That's how he learned, and that's how I teach you now. The first step is always this: assume the end. Not as desire, not as hope, but as memory. Live the scene as if it were already your story, and you will see that all life bends to the decree you sustained in silence. Neville didn't understand why I was telling him to despise appearances. He was used to looking at the facts, at the numbers, at what the eyes could measure. But Master, he said to me, if my pockets are empty, how can I feel wealth? If the door seems closed, how will I believe that it is already open? I answered him, that is precisely why you remain trapped, Neville, because you give authority to the shadows, as if they were the light itself. What you call reality is merely residue of what has already been created. It is the harvest of seeds you planted yesterday. But the man who wishes to change tomorrow must no longer bow before today. Learn to see beyond what your eyes show you. I showed him that appearances are deceptive because they always carry a delay. What we see is always the past. The body you have today is the fruit of states assumed before. The money or lack of it you have in your hands is the result of images sustained in another time. If you accept this as definitive, you will be imprisoned in endless cycles. I told him, when someone who is sick accepts the illness as their final reality, it consumes them. But when they dare, in the midst of the pain, to despise the visible picture and assume health, then the invisible begins to rewrite the visible. Learn this, Neville. Appearance is not a sentence, it's just an echo. He insisted, but what if the appearance shouts louder than my vision? I told him, then close your ears to the shout and open your heart to the whisper of truth. You are not called to fight against the facts, but to ignore them as one ignores a lie that has already been unmasked. The beggar on the street may seem poor, but if he assumes within himself the dignity of abundance, sooner or later the world will have to respond to him. The difference lies in which voice he decides to honor. the voice of misery that the eyes show, or the voice of wealth that the heart dares to assume. To make him understand better, I led him to a simple practice. I asked him, in the face of a limited scenario, to close his eyes and refuse the narrative he was telling. I told him, look at this picture and say, this is shadow, not essence. It is not my destiny. It is just a reflection that no longer has strength. Now choose within yourself the true scene and give it more credit than you gave to the world. Thus, little by little, he learned to give more weight to the inner vision than to the outer one. I explained to him that despising appearances is not denying their existence but refusing their authority. A king may listen to rumors in his palace, but he does not bow to them. His word is law. So too the awakened man. He may see limitations before him, but he does not grant them power. He sustains his inner order until the appearance, like a servant, bows. Neville, by practicing this, discovered something powerful. When he stopped reacting to circumstances and started treating them as empty shells, they began to change effortlessly. What seemed like an obstacle dissolved, what seemed like a lack turned into abundance, because they no longer had anywhere to lean on. I then said to him, do you understand now? Reality is not what you see, but what you dare to assume. When you despise appearances, you free yourself from the prison of the past and allow the new state to flourish. That's how Neville realized that circumstances have no voice of their own. They are just reflections of a deeper decree. And so I say to you too, do not fear what you see, do not cling to what seems. The power is not outside. Learn to ignore the lie of appearances and to live the truth of the chosen state, and you will see how everything that seemed fixed will turn to dust before your conviction. Neville took a while to understand what I meant when I ordered him, inhabit the scene until it is a memory. For him, imagining was a fleeting exercise, almost like a dream that is visited for moments and soon fades away. I showed him that this is not enough. What creates is not the momentary fantasy, but the constancy of an assumed memory. I told him, don't visit the state as a tourist, Neville. Live in it as a resident. Enter and never leave again. He closed his eyes and tried to visualize the scene he desired. In the beginning, his thoughts scattered. His mind wandered to the difficulties, and doubt crept in like a thief. I interrupted him. It doesn't matter if the world shouts the opposite to you. Your task is to sustain the scene as someone who remembers an accomplished fact. You don't desire, you don't wait, you remember. He still didn't understand the difference between dreaming and remembering, so I insisted. When you remember something, you don't ask if it will happen. You already know it was. That's the key. Live the future as a memory and it will have no choice but to become the present. To make it clearer, I asked him to imagine a simple action, holding in his hands a letter from his homeland, announcing what he so desired. I told him, don't stay watching from the outside. Feel the paper between your fingers. Listen to the sound as you open the envelope. Read the words written. React as you would react if it were real. Smile, sigh, give thanks. Don't stop until your heart is convinced that this has already happened. He tried. In the beginning, it was just effort, but repeating, something changed. His lips curved into an involuntary smile, his shoulders relaxed, and I saw in his closed eyes the spark of conviction. I interrupted him and asked, "What do you feel now?" He replied, "It's like I really lived it, like it's a memory of something that already happened." I confirmed, "Exactly, this is the secret. Imagination, when sustained until it becomes natural, engraves in the being a decree that the visible world cannot resist." I explained to him that the common mistake of men is to play at imagining for a few seconds and then return to the old state, as one releases the rudder of a ship in the middle of the crossing. But what governs is not the brief flash, but the insistence until the scene becomes second nature. "Repeat," I told him. "Repeat until your heart no longer asks for signs but rests in the fact, until when you think about it, you no longer feel hope but certainty, because at that point the external world has already been defeated." Neville realized that something inside him had changed before anything outside moved. That was the first time he understood that inner peace is the first sign of creation accomplished. When the scene becomes memory, the man stops fighting, stops searching, and just lives in rest. And like night that turns into day, life begins to respond. Thus he learned, and thus I teach you now. It is not enough to dream, it is not enough to desire. It is necessary to inhabit the scene with such fidelity that it becomes a memory engraved in you. Sustain it until it is more real than what you see with your eyes, and you will see the world bend without effort. For that which is already memory in the imagination has no choice but to become fact in time. Neville used to read the scriptures like most men. He saw in them accounts of the past, distant stories of characters he considered greater than himself. One day, I showed him the Bible open and said, "As long as you read it as if it were a record of others, you will remain blind to its true power. Each written word is a mirror of what happens in you. They are not dead stories, they are living instructions." He looked at me intrigued, as if he had never heard that before, and asked, "So everything that is written is about me?" I looked at him firmly and replied, "About you, Neville, and about every man who dares to understand. There is no past there. There is a map of the mind and law of life." I led him to a well-known passage. "If you believe, you will see the glory of God." He read that as if it were a distant promise, but I said to him, "It is not a promise, but an immediate condition. To believe is to assume the state. To see the glory is to see it appear in the world. There is no waiting, there is no interval. Scripture does not order you to wait for the favor of heaven, but orders you to assume the faith now, and the now will become form." He then asked me, "And when the text speaks of moving mountains, isn't that just a metaphor?" I laughed at his doubt and replied, "The mountain is your difficulty. It can be poverty, illness, abandonment, fear. And faith is your conviction that the state is already yours. When you assume within yourself that you have already overcome it, the mountain loses its strength. Not because it disappears immediately, but because the world does not resist the inner decree. And sooner or later, what seemed like an obstacle will be dust under your feet." So that he would understand, I gave him an exercise. Read the text as if it were speech directed to you, not to a distant character. When you read about Moses opening the sea, don't think of a man and a people thousands of years ago. See yourself before your waters of impossibility. The staff is your sustained imagination, and the sea that opens is the path that emerges when you dare to believe. Each passage is a code. Decipher it and you will see that Scripture does not narrate what was, but what is, and always will be. Neville was silent, absorbing. It was as if the veil had fallen from his eyes. He realized that the Bible, far from being a book of stories, was a manual of creative power. "So," he said, "each character is myself, in different states." And I confirmed, "Yes, Neville. You are the David who faces giants. You are the prodigal son who returns home. You are the blind man who regains his sight. Each narrative is your own inner drama. When you read it like this, no longer as a spectator, but as a protagonist, you will understand that the Word was made flesh in you." He began to practice this reading, and with each new page his faith ceased to be theory and became experience. Scripture ceased to be distant and became alive because each verse was an immediate order to assume the state. And I told him, "Just as the Word does not return empty, so too your imagination, when sustained, will not fail. For both are one and the same. Scripture is just the reflection of the law that already acts in you." Thus he learned, and thus I teach you now. Do not read the texts as a memory of a dead past, but as a key to your present. Each promise is a decree, each miracle is an instruction. See yourselves in the symbols, assume faith as a state, and you will discover that what you judge to be a metaphor is practice, and what you called history is your own destiny in motion. Neville had already understood the power of assuming the end, of despising appearances, of inhabiting the scene as memory, and of reading the Scriptures as a living law. But he was still missing something essential: constancy. For he, like so many, flared up with conviction in one moment and soon yielded to discouragement in the next. It was then that I said to him with severity, "Discipline is sovereignty. Without it, all understanding is lost like water between your fingers." I explained to him that the mind, accustomed to wandering, needs governance. It is not enough to imagine once and expect the world to bend. It is necessary to return night after night to the desired scene. It is necessary to deny, every morning, the lies of fear that try to steal your vision. You must be faithful to the state, as a king is faithful to his throne. If you abandon the position, another will take the place, and the world will reflect your oscillation. He asked me, "But isn't it tiring to fight against thoughts?" I replied, "It is not a fight. It is vigilance. I am not asking you for desperate effort, but for serene firmness. When a thought of doubt arises, do not feed it. Return to the state you have chosen as one returns home. Discipline is not weight, it is constant practice until it becomes natural. The one who disciplines himself no longer strives, he lives." I gave him a simple example. When a musician practices, he repeats the same notes until his fingers move without thinking. So too you. Repeat the vision until your soul no longer needs to force, but naturally breathes the chosen state. And then, when external life tries to drag you away, your conviction will be stronger than any appearance. Neville began to practice this discipline. In the beginning, he failed. At night, he tried to dress the desired scene, but soon gave in to weariness. I told him, "Even if you fall asleep in the middle of the vision, you have already sown in the garden of the invisible. Keep going, don't stop." Little by little, the habit shaped him. He no longer needed effort to feel, it was enough to close his eyes, and the assumed memory enveloped him like a garment. I also showed him that discipline is denying oneself, not in sacrifice, but in firmness. I told him, "Deny the old story, deny the old self that insists on returning. Don't listen to it anymore. Every time fear speaks, answer in silence, it is already done. Every time the appearance rises up, face it as a powerless shadow. Your fidelity to the state is what seals your creation." Over time, Neville became a master at this. He no longer chased after signs. He no longer allowed himself to be shaken by circumstances. His discipline made him king of himself. And I said to him, "Do you see now, Neville? Freedom is not in having control of the world, but in having governance of your interior. For he who reigns within himself will inevitably see the world bow before him. Thus I say to you now, without discipline, imagination is wind. With discipline, it is law. It is not enough to know the principles. It is necessary to practice them until they become your second nature. Make of each night your altar, of each morning your decree, and of each thought your servant. Sustain the state with fidelity, and nothing, absolutely nothing, will be able to resist your command. That's how I instructed Neville, and that's how I instruct you. All that seems solid and immovable out there is just a reflection of what you have chosen to sustain within. The world is not your master, it is your mirror. Neville learned to assume the end, to despise appearances, to inhabit the scene as memory, to read the scriptures as a living map, and to seal everything with discipline. These principles were not theory for him, they became practice, they became flesh. And the same can and must happen with you. Do not beg any longer for signs, do not prostrate yourselves before circumstances as servants of a reality that has no power of its own. Life obeys you always. If you are not yet living what you desire, it is because you have not yet dared to assume it with the firmness of someone who knows it already is. The world has no choice before a convinced heart. Therefore, stop asking, stop begging, stop waiting. Assume within yourselves now the state that you desire. Sustain it as someone who already possesses it, and you will see the invisible organize the visible. The obstacles dissolve, the doors open, not because the world changed of its own will, but because they obey the order that came from you. I tell you with the same force with which I told Neville, when you visualize like this, everything changes instantly. Choose today to live as creators and no longer as beggars, for you are already heirs and the kingdom you seek is within you.